21st, 2019, exactly 2 years ago, the ending of the 5th season of Steven Universe was broadcast. This episode single-handedly destroyed all of the narrative potential that the show had been building up to for the past 5 years. It is a pacing clusterfuck. It attempts to wrap up all of its conflicts in the span of 44 minutes when they're really not ready to do that at all. They introduce new fusions at a point in the show that's only for fan service, as the relationships between the characters haven't been developed enough yet. At minute 5, they redeem one of the villains who hasn't been developed enough. At minute 10, they redeem an even lesser developed villain. At minute 25, they technically introduce our final villain. At minute 35, she's redeemed. These villains are fascist dictators. Now, I'm not saying that the writers are Nazi sympathizers, as a bunch of brainless dolts have done so in the past. What I'm saying is, from a narrative position, this choice is irresponsible and stupid. I have simplified a lot in this brief summary of its flaws, and I can do an entire critique of this episode. However, for some reason, this episode is quite defended. What I'm presenting are several arguments I've seen in favor of the episode. These challenge the story and its writing quality. I will be ordering them by how impactful they are for the sole purpose of me debunking them. Strap in, dear viewer, because this video is long, angry, and has the biggest revelation about Steven Universe that challenges the competency of the writers at the helm, and recontextualizes the very existence of this video. Let's fucking go. To everyone who makes this argument, I only have one question to ask you. Did you forget the show that you're watching? If the show was able to tackle this, and this, and this, it would certainly be able to tackle genocide. They don't have to explicitly say the word genocide, but they can still tackle it. When dealing with mature topics in children's media and you have to adhere to a rating based on certain language, you don't have to scrap the topic entirely. This show is the biggest example of this that came out in the 2010s. Not to mention, Off-Colors literally shows robots with the express purpose of destroying off-colored gems. Apparently showing the genocide from the perspective of the intended victims is okay, but condemning the people responsible without even saying the specific word is not age appropriate, okay? Let's look at Smoky Quartz and the build-up to their reveal. It builds off of a 4-episode conflict between Steven and Amethyst. After this point, the nature of their relationship changed forever, with Amethyst going from a protective figure of Steven to more of an equal. In Garnet's case, they come to this conclusion in a fraction of the time, but their relationship isn't tested or put into contention. In the one scene, Garnet just sort of monologues all of the issues she's having to the audience. Hey, remember back when the show actually conveyed this to us by actually showing these issues? This actually had the potential to create a divide in the Crystal Gems and a Fallout arc similar to Amethyst. If the Amethyst arc had been done entirely through words alone, do you think the fusion would have been warranted? Before you use Stevani to counter me, I also think that it's too early in their relationship as well. The beginning of Season 2 is where their relationship is tested the most. This is the most adequate place to introduce them. You can also argue that Steven comes to an understanding of Garnet's individual components, but this is still incorrect. Episode 1 of Steven Bomb 7 only serves to inform Sapphire that Pink is not a manipulative fuck. Episode 3 sees Ruby attempt to make a new life for herself. This episode actually does pass the criteria I laid out for the Amethyst episode. If it does, rush past it. So I'll give that episode half a star. However, this is only newfound understanding of one of Garnet's components, half of an arc. Pearl is a case you can argue much more heavily than Garnet. Steven and Pearl spend 3 seasons training together. Perfect time to develop their relationship there. Gem Hunt sees Steven and Connie go off on their own to face a corrupted gem. Would Pearl in late Season 1 allow Steven to do that? Of course not. However, this development happens almost entirely off-screen. Imagine if the Connie arc occurred off-screen and actually impacted their relationship moving forward. Would they have any sort of visible character growth? There's barely any exploration, whereas Fusion debuts, or at least the good ones, actually explore the relationships between the two components. Storytelling, 2 devices are the setup and the payoff. The setup doesn't exist, however, because we never saw it. It happened, but the character growth was just skipped over. Therefore, the payoff, Rainbow 2.0, isn't earned. These fusions are not earned. They're just not. No, they did not. And if they did, there was absolutely no indication.
I always thought that you were failing this world. But if you were happier on Earth, maybe this world was failing you.
We all must make sacrifices for the sake of our perfect empire!
Does this look perfect to you? The only emotional depth that these characters went through prior to this sudden redemption was that they thought Pink was shattered and that Rose Quartz did it. That's been the entire fucking conflict of the show since season 4. The only indication prior to Change Your Mind that was directly validated in Change Your Mind was that the other diamonds were afraid of White and have a complex relationship with her. And the first time they're made aware of these flaws was when Steven directly communicated them to them. And after enforcing the system for who knows how long, don't you think it would take a while before a change like this? Oh my god, this is such a flimsy point. It's so flimsy that debunking it would be a waste of my time. I'm going to draw from my own personal experiences to counter this. In 2019, I had found myself falling down the anti-SJW rabbit hole. During my time here, I held some rather unfavorable views towards transgender people. A year later, I don't hold these beliefs, as you can obviously tell. Last week, I mistakenly implied that women cannot have penises, despite the fact that I myself am a woman with a penis. Now, does me saying this make me some evil transphobic devil? No, it doesn't. After holding certain beliefs for an extended period of time and switching to new beliefs, there is going to be the occasional slip-up. White's statements are not consistent with their current beliefs. All of Gemkind referred to non-gems this way for thousands of years. I mean, look at how pissy people get nowadays when someone uses they-them pronouns. This is actually a quite solid statement to make, as it's implied that this ability is brand new, and the only thing close to this ability we have seen prior was this one scene, so I'm not going to contest this. But don't you think that this justification is still kind of bad writing? I don't care what kind of bullshit excuse you make, it's still a character arc occurring in the span of only a few minutes. And even arcs that focus on this concept need more time to grow. We've replaced deconstructing a character's motivations, nurture an understanding of right and wrong, showing them becoming more open-minded, going through a relapse, and seeing the direct flaws told to her for the past half season in full force, to all of that occurring off-screen in the span of a few seconds. This is not how character writing works. It may explain the quick redemption, but it doesn't mean that it's well written. You know what? You're right. The Diamonds were just an abusive, controlling family, except instead of being abusive and controlling to a few children, they're abusive and controlling to an entire race and society while also ruling over it. I wonder if there's a word for that. The Diamonds' family issues aren't the only aspect of their character. While the problematic family is what Change Your Mind focused on, the show attempts to paint their entire character as in the right despite completely ignoring the far more problematic aspects of their character. This type of presentation is not warranted for characters who have committed such atrocities. Some attempt to argue that the Gempire is an absolute monarchy, and while from a leadership standpoint this is correct, the actual government of the Gempire is deeply fascist. Here are several aspects of the Gempire that are consistent with fascist regimes. This one is quite obvious. The gems have created weapons specifically designed to shatter gems that are either creative, defective, or fused by their own free will. When the off-colors are made aware that Garnet was an accomplice of Rose Quartz, they fly into a shock. Rutile specifically says that Rose was a hyper-defective quartz gone haywire. This lie was obviously spread by Homeworld. Its direct purpose is to create even more prejudice towards defective gems than there already is. Not only this, but it falls into fear-mongering and propaganda, creating societal fear of defective gems by blaming the 1,000-year war that resulted in the death of one of their leaders as a direct result of malformed gems. Every single arc that revolves around a specific homeworld gem centers on the idea of nationalism. If you seriously want me to elaborate, then you haven't paid 1 ounce of attention to the show. Their rulers are literally called the Diamond Authority. Every gem is expected to be obedient to fit the system. The only fate to those that don't is death. Yellow and White adopt the mentality that their empire is perfect and disregard the people below them on that basis. Fusion is banned in the Gem Empire. Fusions are sent into hiding in the caves. When Peridot challenges Yellow Diamond, Yellow attempts to kill Peridot by detonating an explosive. And those are 8 glaring similarities that the Gempire shares with historical fascist regimes. Can we just end this shit already? Before I respond to this, I think it's important that I defend myself. In my last video, I posed the argument that using outside media like a podcast or a book released 2 years later when debating the quality of writing is invalid.
They set up that people who live in hell are getting killed. What if I told you they threw that all away for a stupid joke?
Supplementary media does reveal that the exterminators have angelic weapons that are the only methods of killing demons. These weapons are generally spears, and occasionally they leave these spears behind. Vaggie refers to Angel's actions as territorial genocide despite having not used these weapons. And even then, when it comes to media critique, I generally disagree with using supplementary media to justify flaws, as any piece of media can just commit retcon after retcon on a whim. In Rebecca Sugar's new book, End of an Era, she states that White perceives herself as perfect and every gem as a reflection of her. However, she is quite fragile and can't handle criticism. All of these elements directly occur and change your mind. This is reinforced with Steven's conversation with White. The framing of the conversation implies White's actions are all conscious.
You know, if you just let everyone be whoever they are, maybe you could let yourself be whoever you are too.
A direct quote from the head writer explaining events that occur in the show. There is nothing more airtight than that. As such, sourcing this is valid. Now we know that White's inability to accept any sort of criticism is due to the fact that she herself believes she is perfect because she is a manifestation of only white light. White does have the conscious ability to accept criticism, but yet doesn't do so at all. What is she, a Steven Universe fan? She may have the assigned purpose to create the society, but her slaughter of unknowable amounts of off-colors was done by her own volition. The woman is obviously able to fucking emote, as she used to have a motherly relationship with Pink, but yet she feels no compassion towards the gems she slaughters because she only views them as extensions of her own flaws and not real individuals. This is false. As I've articulated throughout this video, the catalyst for Yellow to stop fighting Blue was Steven directly communicating that their empire was not perfect. The catalyst for Blue was her realizing that she had been mistreating Pink, but then she comes to the conclusion that this world is failing her. Steven only broke through to Yellow because he posed a question, a more effective method of communication to her that directly challenges her viewpoints. Again, these arcs would be perfectly fine if they occurred over a more spaced out stretch of time and didn't happen to the leaders of this system who initially agreed with White's view on society. When White has an identity crisis, Steven says that she can learn how to be herself as she allows others to be themselves, a challenging of the system through White's own flaws. At this very moment, Steven is a stranger to White, and White knows this more than the other diamonds. As the events play out, all of their reasonings for stopping have nothing to do with the fact that it's Steven. The main issue with the Diamond Redemption, outside of the speed of the arc, is how it's presented to the audience. The tone of the end segment is not warranted for characters who committed such horrible atrocities and only realized what they were doing was wrong less than a day prior. You can argue that it is a children's show and it needs a happy fairy tale ending where everything's happy, but this show attempts to present itself as thematically more adult and as such has to be taken more seriously. If the diamonds truly are not redeemed, then that should be conveyed to the audience through dialogue, facial expressions, and tone. However, they didn't do that. The diamonds were redeemed, and that's a problem. Holy shit, I did not even want to include this segment because it's fucking obvious, but apparently the biggest channel dedicated to the show still unironically thinks that the Diamonds never committed genocide. Genocide refers to the deliberate killing of a large portion of a group with the intention of eradicating that group entirely. I'll let you fill in those blanks. I genuinely respect you, Kevin, even outside of that Twitter rant I handed you on early January. But if you're the biggest channel dedicated to analyzing the show, but you still argue against these major plot elements directly shown to the audience, then maybe you should get a job as a writer for the game theorists. I'm fucking done with this shit. I need a break. Here's some promotions. Hey, do you like this video? I broke myself trying to make it. I also have a stutter, sorry.
I've got a sister who's the love of my life.
I'm probably gonna get a lot of extra viewers from this, so I'm gonna goad you into subscribing to me. Everything you've seen in this video is going to manifest its way into my content and style. I make response videos. I have a prior one on Has Been Hotel. You guys like Has Been Hotel, right? Well, do you guys also like terrible audio quality? I'm gonna try to tackle every critique of it that I can, because nobody seems to be able to criticize the damn show. Please don't watch my Rise of Skywalker video. I attempted to feminize my voice for that one because I thought I would be able to record 40-minute videos with my voice like that. The editing is simplistic too because I rushed it out in like 2 days to make way for a video that I deleted after 3 hours. I'll remake it eventually. Anyways, I'll make more response videos and just other shit, you know? Just fucking wait. Also, can you guys please subscribe to Kiro? This was originally a collaborative project between me and him, but all of his segments got cut because the direction of the project changed midway. He's making a video debunking flat earth theories at the moment, and he deserves to have some type of audience when he steps onto the scene. Hey guys, do you want some actual good writing? Then why not check out this webcomic at Hell's Bottom. It centers around a boy who's sent to purgatory with several other people. Only one of these people is allowed to regain their old life. They have to cooperate and fight to the death in 7 floors of hell. Occasionally, they'll have to vote to kill someone, which is a reference to the hit game Among Us. If you don't like it, leave. I love my wife, and she is never sus, which is a reference to the hit game Among Us. The comic is currently in its prologue, so all of that good shit I described hasn't occurred yet, but at the moment, the themes in the prologue are incredibly smart, so I have high hopes for this. The prologue also has the word lowly used in it 3 times, so if you're a Reddit mod, Discord admin, or large YouTuber, this is the comic for you. When interviewed by Blair TV Industries, the writer described her work as a melancholy mix of the thriller, murder mystery of Dangan. I always get this fucking name wrong. Danganronpa, the despair of Made in Abyss, and a little bit of the platform movie sprinkled in on the side, along with lots of edge and dark themes. So as a filthy American whose only exposure to anime is the level 5 game Damn Ball Senki, this means absolutely nothing to me. Speaking of anime, some of you may have noticed striking similarities between the art in the comic and the art in my new avatar. This is because they are drawn by the same person. That's right, my 3rd video and I've already sold out. They're drawn by Droid2nd on Twitter. Please give her a follow. She's very good at what she does and the amount of attention she gets doesn't reflect that in the slightest. I didn't even want to credit her. Crediting artists is bad and stupid, as told to me by the most intelligent creator alive, Peak A. Russell. I'm only doing this because she's holding me and my wife hostage, so follow the suite on Twitter. Welp, I've spent the past couple minutes promoting the competent. Time to go back to shitting on the incompetent. And I'm not just being hyperbolic when I say this, because it takes a heavy amount of dim-witted incompetence to manage to fuck up this biblically. Are there any other defenses of change your mind? There are undoubtedly more. I intend to make a follow-up to this video where I respond to criticism I received after this video's released. One aspect I've seen in discourse is that the whole episode is an allegory for coming out as transgender, which, yeah, I can see. When I rewatched the episode for this video, I certainly noticed parallels between Steven and my experience, except for one thing. My parents aren't fascist genocidal warlords, and it is incredibly irresponsible to only defend the conservative parents aspect of the diamonds while forgetting the genocidal fascist aspect. There were certainly several lines that hit so close to home that I actually had to get Rebecca Sugar arrested for stalking me. With their absence, the crew had to end the show quickly, and that's why Steven Universe ended so abruptly. They didn't have enough time to create a satisfying ending. This is an argument I've seen made a lot. It's supposed to be the end-all be-all defense for the episode's problematic themes and nightmarish pacing. It's a pretty airtight defense too, and I don't see many prolific responses to it. If I were to debunk it, I would have made my mark on Steven Universe criticism and be remembered amongst the likes of Easy Peasy and Lily Orchard. Well, maybe not them. Anyways, in order to debunk this episode's biggest defense, I would have to face my biggest opponent, myself. Everyone thinks they know the whole story. Rebecca Sugar had a meeting with Cartoon Network executives. In this meeting, they told her that after season 5, that was it. No more Steven Universe. Rebecca said she couldn't manage to get it all out in time. Everyone logically assumes the crew were quite late into season 5 because of this. They begged for just 6 more episodes so that they could have enough time. These 6 episodes became Together Alone, Escapism, and Change Your Mind, extending the season to 32 episodes. However, initially the network said no to these 6 episodes, and that was the whole ordeal. This story is true. There's a Polygon article that directly confirms this. However, one detail is always omitted from this. After the meeting, Rebecca was distraught and immediately wrote a song detailing her feelings. That song ended up creeping into the episode that the team was currently working on. That song was titled I Could Never Be Ready. But hang on, that episode was in season 4. The first half of season 4, meaning they were aware they were short on time 40 episodes in advance. In fact, judging by the date of December 1st, 2016 that the episode was released on, we can pinpoint the exact date this meeting transpired. Episodes of Steven Universe typically take around 9 months from drawing board, presumably February, to complete. December. When production started, they had not been renewed for a 5th or even a 4th season. In late March of that year, they were renewed for 2 seasons, but the cancellation meeting couldn't have occurred much later as the episodes were to be shipped to North Korea soon, meaning that until there is further evidence, this meeting happened on March 30th, 2016. They were aware they were out of time for 2 years. Judging by how the meeting is presented in the article, immediately saying that she did not have enough time, and the fact that the pacing barely changes and at points even slows down, it suggests that they did not alter course at all. They didn't even start conceptualizing the design for the final fucking villain until over a year afterwards. They just kept trudging along, fully aware of the massive countdown clock, but not doing shit about it until time was nearly up. 40 episodes is a lot of time. It accounts for 7 hours and 20 minutes of animated material. In just 40 episodes, we went from Steven barely able to use his shield multiple times without losing all of his strength, and witnessing Pearl and Garnet fuse for the first time, to Steven having an array of different abilities, holding his own against 2 highly trained crystal gems, and beating the perfect quartz soldier by fusing with another crystal gem. If the final Greg episode was at a point in production where a new song could be dropped in, then all of the episodes surrounding it could have been partially rewritten to speed up the show's storyline while they formulate a plan for writing the next few arcs, but they didn't do that. They went on to deliver 2 of the worst seasons in the entire show. We are locked out of criticizing the first 10 episodes, so we'll start off with the zoo arc. This arc is actually quite solid in terms of plot relevance, mainly with how it handles Pink Diamond. I only ask that they try to cram in a bit more because they are on a deadline. The new crystal gems introduces a conflict that's never showed up before, and the characters don't change after the fact. Despite having gems, it's filler. I'm actually quite conflicted on Tiger Philanthropist. It seeks to bookend Amethyst's arc right where it started, but that's really all it does. Same thing applies to Room for Ruby, but there's no reason why there's a fucking useless Ronaldo episode when you're on a ticking clock. Episodes like Lion 4 fall into the Room for Ruby category for me. and the finale, minus the Lars episode, is all significant. Season 4, at least from a simplified glance, does attempt to progress its characters, but it's done so quite slowly when they really can't afford to do that at all. More on that in a bit. Some viewers might be wondering why I said that Lars is inconsequential to the narrative. Well, this is all explained in Season 5. Season 5 was filled to the brim with nonsense. 3 episodes of the Wanted arc were completely pointless to the rest of the story. Seriously, Lars is completely pointless. The majority of his character arc happens off-screen for both Season 5 and future, so the snippets we're shown are essentially pointless. Without the Lars arc being of any use, the Sadie arc falls flat. Cut these two from Season 5 and the overarching plot remains relatively the same. The Connie Fallout arc made no sense given what Connie knows about Steven, and the way they attempt to justify it by comparing it to Dewey doesn't work either. This Fallout arc also does nothing to alter their friendship in the slightest. Almost every event that happens with Lapis and Peridot gets resolved and everything goes back to normal, which begs the question as to why they even bothered at all. All of these arcs are incomplete and only really communicate singular details about the characters in question. It's pointless. Everything with Lars is pointless, meaning that only the second half of Jungle Moon has anything of consequence. You could argue that the shit with the off-colors, which goes absolutely nowhere, has a purpose due to your mother in mind. However, the only thing that's important in the episode is the flashbacks, something that can easily be used in a different context, for instance to cheer up Steven. Pool hopping changes absolutely nothing, and the conflicts introduced don't come up again. The Unfusion arc occurs for unrelated reasons. The only narratively significant episodes are the trial, A Single Pale Rose, and everything afterwards. Steven Universe constantly wasted its time on underdeveloped plot threads that go nowhere in this jumbled, broken mess of a show. That's why I consider them dead weight and remove them. So prepare to watch as a 15-year-old girl tries to make the show great again. The power of professional writing is nothing compared to staying up and watching video essays all night. What are Steven Universe's shortcomings that were inflicted on by Change Your Mind? The two most important aspects of Steven Universe that didn't get fully explored by this incompetent display are world building and character. In order to handle these two aspects that take a lot of space, you need to double up. Season 3 combined world-building the idealist society of Homeworld with Amethyst's self-confidence issues, as well as introducing a new fusion. The majority of this occurred over the span of one episode, an episode that didn't suffer from any real pacing issues. World-building is significant to a show with an empire like this, but its exploration of world-building is minimal. Having a better understanding of the system that every gem abides by, and that the diamonds enforce, gives off better understanding for pretty much every character in the show. You want to explore character. Steven's relationship with Pearl and Garnet didn't go through any trials and tribulations for one singular episode that only scratched the surface. Do you want a diamond redemption to actually mean something? Have them actually go through an arc where their beliefs are tested over a large period of time and actually be able to address their more heinous actions. Again, Earthlings proves that you can double up character arcs with world building and still have a well-written episode. You want those fusions to be earned? Then earn them. You don't want every fallout present in Season 5 to be completely ditched, then maybe make sure that they change shit. If your arcs don't change your characters, the arcs are pointless and you are wasting valuable time. Some may be arguing that the idea of having the show's intended character arcs occur over a shorter period of time and grouping up some concepts with others would cause more issues than it fixes. For instance, you could say that speeding up the pacing would mean that multiple episode concepts would get cut. However, it's incredibly obvious that Change Your Mind was not the intended ending, and that the writers had cut off the story at the closest window for an ending possible. As such, multiple episode concepts were still lost. If you are arguing this point, you are by proxy arguing that Change Your Mind was the intended ending, which makes the writers look so much worse. Again, a lot happens in 40 episodes, and the pacing doesn't always have to be breakneck. Gravity Falls was originally supposed to be 3 seasons, but due to creative burnout, Alex Hirsch crammed the rest of his story into the last half of Season 2, but yet the pacing remained relatively normal. And might I add that Season 2 is exactly the same amount of time as the 40 episodes that Steven Universe was allotted. So ending Steven Universe in this way wouldn't break the show, but rather keep it alive, unless the writers are even more incompetent. But they didn't do any of that. They stuck to their course and started developing storylines that they themselves knew they wouldn't be able to complete. They wasted so much time on nonsensical drivel until suddenly they reached their deadline, but they had succeeded in getting those 6 episodes. One of which was almost entirely pointless and put out a poorly written farce of an episode. They had so many chances to fix the gaping holes in their story, but they didn't do that at all. I don't understand why Rebecca would do this. They had been made aware for so long, but yet they didn't do anything. They saw the whirlpool a mile away, but still drove the boat straight into the jaws of the downward spiral, and that was the end of it. What followed were desperate attempts at revival, one of which being a film that isn't half bad, although it falls into the same detriment of redeeming one aspect of a character while entirely glossing over the fact that she attempted to murder billions. Their next attempt, Steven Universe Future, is of substandard quality, typically with how they chose to present the show's more heavy themes. They end on a finale that still sucked ass. After revival couldn't even be done, Steven Universe was pronounced dead on March 27th, 2020, after more than a year on life support. And that's where our story ends. I've done it. I've fucking done it. I've presented indisputable evidence that the showrunners are completely incompetent. Any other writing holes that the episode caused can't be defended because I just debunked them. I've officially proven without a shadow of a doubt that you can't defend Steven Universe's finale. You just can't. Oh boy, watching the fandom cope and seethe over this will be a joyous spectacle. What if they actually turn on the show? What if I single-handedly destroyed the fandom with my superior intelligence? What if... Why am I happy? Why am I happy that Steven Universe is bad? Why am I happy that a show that has brought me so much joy when I was younger is actually a piece of trash? Why am I happy that a show whose fandom brought me so many friends, helped me get through social issues, grew me as a person? Why am I happy imagining that fandom dissolving? Why am I so bitter towards Steven Universe? I started watching the show in late 2016. I was only 10 at the time. By late October, I had finished the show and I loved it. For almost 3 years, I was hooked, but in the past 2 years, my relationship with the show went from unbridled praise to unbridled rage. Why? The answer is, of course, change your mind. When I first saw the episodes, I was absolutely blown away. Oh my god, there's so much cool stuff in this. New fusions, diamond fights, a diamond robot, white diamond fight, Steven got his gem removed, and she even learned how to be a good person. This is the best episode ever. After that point, Steven Universe went on a giga hiatus. I remember watching the roundtable after that point, and all of AwestruckVox's theories about the show's continuation. Even when the poster and trailer for the movie was unveiled, AwestruckVox's theories didn't feel as exciting as they were in the past. Something was different. When the movie came out, I still loved it. I watched a short criticism video of it that knocked it down a peg for me. I got a couple other critiques of the film recommended to me after that point, one of which was an hour long. The video's creator was Cartoon She, who ended up becoming a good friend of mine. But before that, JXC, another content creator who I ended up becoming friends with, uploaded a video titled They Completely Ruined Steven Universe. This video tore into Change Your Mind and how it betrayed the show's writing. It made me realize all of the issues that the episodes face. It made me realize the show was not near perfect, and that's when my opinion of the show began to take a nosedive. I started noticing more and more flaws and began to detest the last 2 seasons for reasons I just explained. Then came the first half of Steven Universe Future. It felt like a breath of fresh air as the flaws I notated appeared to be lessened, but something still felt wrong. It wasn't a writing flaw, more a personal issue, barely any antagonists. As I said before, I spent my time in the fandom watching this guy called Kevin speculate on what's in store for the next episode. He threw around interesting concepts concepts. Reading fan fictions like Bubbalo Stevens' interactive stories only amplified this. What I wanted was a show that combined character writing with sci-fi elements. Who knew that these elements were the very thing the show needed to stay afloat? The Diamonds are such interesting antagonists due to the amount of mystery and power they radiated. Merely seeing White Diamond's hand sent ripples throughout the fandom. With the direction the narrative was going, as evident by the Lars shit, we were in for unique episodes and conflicts. Had the show refined its pacing to fit into this deadline, that's what we would have gotten. The two things that keep general audiences invested into media the most are mystery and stakes. That's why I used to love episodes like the Lars of the Stars 2-parter. I had a now deleted YouTube account, and the half of the videos I made in the first 2 months were YouTube poops of Lars of the Stars and Jungle Moon. These episodes had both a sci-fi adventure and what I considered to be gripping character writing. Beginning with the movie, as a direct result of Change Your Mind, mystery and stakes were abruptly cut off. Steven had spent 2 years dismantling the Gempire. Steven dismantled the main threat. The stakes had been lowered to pretty much zero. Steven dismantling the threat means that now he knows pretty much everything about the threat. The mystery element is gone. The fan service that Future delivered was not out of mystery like the past, but out of direct continuation, and I grew less compelled with each passing story. Now, I'm not saying that these aspects are flaws in the writing. Steven dismantling the fascist empire is a logical progression of the fascists stepping down. I am arguing emotional resonance and how Steven Universe failed at resonating with me. This is not part of my critical philosophy, as I tend to argue more in favor of writing coherency. If I were to argue this point on that front, I'd say that Change Your Mind sought to bookend multiple concepts before they were fully developed, but then again, haven't I been doing that for the past 36 minutes? But a year ago, these were my feelings. This was back before I had truly gotten to media critique, and if I were to watch the show for the first time today, I probably wouldn't care as much. I spent the rest of December with my interest dwindling. While I thought Future was well written, I could see exactly why they were doing it. I didn't even care when the series was announced back in October of that year. I just wasn't invested anymore. On December 28th, 2019, I left the fandom after 3 years of service. Within a year, the writer's big mistake took something that used to be fun and killed it. If every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs, but what if you don't even like hot dogs? I felt betrayed by the show. I felt it had done me wrong. I saw flaws start popping up all over the place. How, I thought, how could this show that I thought was so amazing be this bad? This show made up my middle school life, and they broke it. I didn't hate the show, although I had already given up on it. However, it could only get worse from there. In February, Cartoon She struck again, and he ripped apart the first half of Future for me. This feeling of betrayal was only heightened when I sat down and watched the final 10 episodes of the show. This was when the show was arguably at one of its worst points. By the end, I felt like the show had literally backstabbed me. The finale was honestly the most aggravating experience I had in front of a television. I was angry, but didn't know how to process my anger and turn it into critical dialogue. I needed a man of logic. But let's just say logic wasn't very popular amongst certain members of the fandom. Within the span of a month, I had seen both the show and the fandom at one of their worst points. At that point, I was absolutely done and hated the show in its entirety. A hellfire of resentment, all from the singular spark of a bad episode, and that's why I'm so bitter towards this show. In 2007, there was an internet funny man known as the Nostalgic Critic. He was a guy who went back to films he loved in his youth only to discover that they weren't that good. The relationship that an audience shares with the media they're consuming is incredibly important. It can leave a deep emotional impact on the viewer, especially if that viewer is a child. Despite its heavy flaws, Steven Universe is the most inspirational work I have ever consumed. I wouldn't be where I am today without it. However, the same relationship can be negative. Let's treat Steven Universe like a friend, and you have to watch them at their lowest point, reputation-wise. Then imagine all the enjoyment you got out of said friend was actually just bullshit covered in sparkles. Worldview shattering, eh? I think there's a bit of that sentiment in me and others. Many former fans of the show felt this way. You might be blind to this, but a lot of the show's critics used to be fans. Let's listen to them.
When I first started to watch Steven Universe, I hated it. But I carried on because I was using it to procrastinate studying for my exams. As I carried on though, the elements that I found to be childish, frustrating, and obnoxious slowly gave way to more likable versions of the same characters, an intriguing overarching plot, and a sense of humor that made me feel less like I wanted to punch myself in the face. I started to become really invested in the show's mysteries, and it had proved that it could deliver on them as well. Garnet having been a fusion for the whole time, for example, was a clever reveal that made everything that came before it slot into place a little bit better than it had before. Unlike so many shows that use intrigue to keep the audience watching, Steven Universe seemed to actually know how to pay off that intrigue with satisfying answers to the questions it was building up mystery around. As the show progressed through several seasons, the mysteries became bigger and more significant, and the answers became bigger to meet them. We were getting world-shattering payoffs and reveals, but seemingly the biggest payoffs and reveals were still to come. The show was playing its cards close to the chest, and still, 5 seasons in, hadn't revealed White Diamond, who, based on everything we knew about her at the time, was one of the most significant players in the world of the show. Evidence led us to believe that she was the most powerful character in the Steven Universe. I felt like I was being clever when I said that, but I'm pretty sure that's just what it's called, isn't it? When White Diamond was finally revealed, this was the peak of my interest in the show. Surely we're in the endgame now, and it's time for the biggest payoffs the show has ever delivered, is what I thought. At the time, before just a few episodes later, White Diamond gets one of the most rushed redemption arcs I've ever seen. There were no more big payoffs to intriguing mysteries. It really did seem like suddenly this was it, and this is what we'd been leading up to the whole time. I still feel that there probably was a plan right from the beginning, but little did I know that that plan was to take a nosedive off a cliff. In just a few episodes, the show had revealed all the cards it was still holding, and those cards were not very good cards. There was just one of them, and it said, Rushed Redemption Arc. Suddenly it felt kind of cheap that I was ever intrigued by this mystery if this was going to be the payoff to it. It really didn't feel great, and it absolutely killed my investment in this show.
Steven Universe was a show that I used to be genuinely emotionally invested in. The ending of Season 1, along with most of Seasons 2 and 3, were solid despite some of the obvious shortcomings. The songs were great, the story, while a little disjointed at points, was still engaging, and I did warm up to the characters quite a bit. It wasn't this incredibly perfect show that everyone was screaming about at the time I was recommended it, but it was simply an enjoyable and engaging show with characters that I wanted to see grow and succeed. All of these positives, however, went down in flames with the arrival of Season 4. Season 4 is kind of notorious for being filled with, well, filler, and for also being one of the most inconsistent seasons in the show from animation to character writing. Only to then stuff the ending full of massive story moments that just kind of happen. Like you'd have an episode that would normally be mistaken for filler, and then right to the end it's like, hey look, there's Aquamarine, isn't that cool? This kind of problem tends to plague a show that knows it doesn't have much time left, which begs the question of why they bother with the filler in the first place. This exact same thing happened with Star vs. the Forces of Evil's last season, which, as most of you probably know, crashed and burned in a very similar way. But the show still had one season left, one last chance to get things back on track, one last no, I'm not gonna fuck with you, it was shit. Season 5 was one of the worst seasons of the show. In fact, no, it was the worst season of the show, not counting the burning dumpster fire that would soon become Steven Universe Future. This season focused on story a lot more, but still had random filler episodes smacked in the middle of an ongoing story arc. And these episodes range from mediocre to straight up atrocious. But then when we got back to the story, there were only a few episodes where I felt as if I was actually engaged. Steven Universe has been tonally borked to some extent for a long time now, but you could really feel it in some of these episodes. However, none of it could compare to how bad the last stretch of the season was. It was being revealed to be Pink Diamond has been shat on multiple times, but I can't stress enough just how bad and bizarre this twist was. Then there's the whole ordeal of the diamonds being redeemed, which some people have tried to argue against. No, I'm not going to get too in-depth into that. There's an entire video by Dark Gentleman explaining why this defense is wrong. It's really good. Then there's Season 5's finale as a whole, which was just the purest of garbage, and then we had Steven Universe the movie, which was basically a nicely animated music video of 20 minutes of plot strung together in specific intervals, with one of the only saving graces of the movie being the introduction of one of the best characters on the show. Then we had Steven Universe Future, a mental health PSA disguised as a legit continuation of the original show, that not only manages to completely butcher what it was supposed to be talking about, but was also so bad, so mind-numbingly bad, that it made me create a second video talking about its ending right after I said that I wouldn't do that. People make assumptions about me from time to time that I'm this anti-woke right-wing jackass, specifically because I go after poorly written shows that just so happen to appeal to people on the left. Well, I appreciated Steven Universe's representation. I was on board with the characters. Hell, I used to even ship 2 of them. The big gay doesn't bother me. The thing that bothers me is when shows that I'm interested in or are already invested in suddenly turn bad and just so happen to have gay characters representation in them, that people get distracted by due to the fact that they are undeniably a massive step forward. However, I would appreciate something a lot more if it came with good writing and wasn't just a mediocre snorefest that jingles rainbow-coloured car keys in people's faces, just to make them forget about the fact that their show is embarrassingly shallow. As previously stated, I used to really like Steven Universe, but I cannot deny the fact that the show hasn't been able to reach the heights of Season 3 again and have fallen far below it.
These are just 2 of the show's vocal critics, but there are undoubtedly more who feel this way. Cartoon Cheese thoughts spark a very interesting question, however. Season 4 was when Steven Universe's downfall truly began unfolding. If Steven Universe had actually altered course for those last 40 episodes, would the show still be as hated? Almost all of the show's vocal critics start going after the show after Season 4 had aired. Online, the aspect of the show I see criticized the most is the pacing and the other aspects that were a direct result of bad pacing. Had this show even tried to meet their deadline, I genuinely believe it would be a lot more respected than it is now. And that's what makes everything about this show's downfall so much more saddening. I'm aware I've been over-dramatic throughout this video, and I find that I overreacted to the show's downfall initially. I'm aware that this video isn't perfect. It took a 1 in a million shot just to pull off. During the time of producing this video, however, my relationship with the show has actually become more positive. I've reconnected with members of the fandom, I've clarified my stance on critic tolerance, I've worked to stop assuming the worst of the fandom, I've actually started to miss the show and intend to rewatch it once I'm done with all this. In the future, I intend to talk about the show and its elements, good and bad. I know I'm probably not done criticizing this episode, as I need to clarify my stances once this video inevitably gets showered with criticism, but hey, you can't change everyone's mind. But I hope I've changed yours.